So they were the Cowboys. To a Maverick, a Lion. I think I saw a Warrior. To a Bronco. From a Bear to a Bronco. Dave was all of those things. To so many kids and so many schools and so many programs and so many baseball players. Cross-country players, cross-country runners. Just kids in general. He was great at all of them. But as a man, as a son, as a husband, as a grandfather, a dad, and a friend, Dave was even better than all of that with his people that he knew closely. And that showed on that slideshow. So thank you guys for doing that. That was awful nice. I knew Dave. My name's Rick Hansen. I knew Dave. You don't know me. I knew Dave from my San Diego State days, way back in the early 80s. So yesterday, coached by Dave, I might have been the oldest guy Dave ever coached. You know, that was there. That was there. I was not a baseball player. I played football. And so when I took a class from Dave on coaching baseball, it was really supposed to be Jim Dietz, the head coach, but this skinny, tall guy showed up the first day of class, and he was hiding behind a fungo. And you never saw Coach Dietz, you saw Coach Legg. And it was kind of a blessing, because Dave made the class real fun. From there, he went to Wyoming, and I started teaching and doing my thing, and eventually we came back together, and we kind of re-met in Murrieta, California. My two boys are very similar to DC and Derek's age, and we remembered each other. It was kind of a nice bonding. And so my friendship with Dave goes back to the early 80s. It's kind of grown. I used to sit in the PE office with Dave every day, and our desks butted up, and he looked at my ugly mug, and I looked at his ugly mug every day. And so we had a great time. But I got some words I wrote down just regarding Dave as my observations over many years of watching him and doing what he does. Okay? I call it preparing for the process of achievement. Dave Legg was all about the things between the innings, the games, and the seasons, between the miles, the laps, and the races. His continuing rigging of fly rods, patiently analyzing the river, casting into that perfect spot, then sending me and others pictures like the one you saw of the massive trout he would catch in these pristine rivers up here, which I was a little jealous because I wasn't retired then. This is how I remember Dave Legg. He honored the process. He respected the preparation, and he disciplined himself for the achievement, the success. Dave knew that it was okay to listen to his footsteps, walking away from things in life that didn't serve God and didn't honor his faith. The things that disrespect the correct preparation, dishonor the correct process, and halt the expected achievements. Those footsteps away from things non-serving lead towards the applications that strengthens faith, family, and friendships. In retrospect, Dave's footsteps were always focused on the preparation and process in his life for his teams and individually as a competitor. As an angler, fisherman, he wasn't as humble as he was when he was coaching. His large grin in his fly fishing photos were always joyful and a little boastful, I think. That was okay because he really found a happy place on the classic pristine waters out here in Montana. Dave was a God-fearing man and loved Jesus. Dave Legg knew that everyone who has died as a believer in Jesus Christ is still living now. You will see them again. Even though the separation is so hard, all the struggles of this life have to be seen in terms of eternity. God takes the long view. Dave believed in and thanked the Lord so much that this earthly life is not the end. We ask God to reveal to us all the light of his Son, Jesus Christ, both in our celebrating of life and during our heartbreaking struggles. Let us all know the light of God's eternity. We celebrate Coach Dave Legg. His marvelous achievements he had and was a part of the lives of all he influenced in such a positive way. Young student athletes across the western United States and coaches that toiled with him in advancing the process and preparation needed for success. I know I'm one of them. Thank you, Dave. I'll miss you, brother. But to be absent from this world is to be present with Jesus Christ. So I wanted to thanks for this. Who am I bringing up? Yes.
I will just warn you that this is probably not going to be pretty. I met Coach Legg for the first time when I was only 11 years old. At the time he was Mr. Legg at Chavela Middle School. Little did I know that just a few years down the road I would become known as Coach Legg's son's girlfriend and eventually wife. I want to acknowledge that I am one of the lucky ones that has my own wonderful father, to whom I'm incredibly grateful for raising me in a caring and loving home. I count myself very blessed to not only have his love, but to have received the love of a second father as well. That man is David Legg, who I have always and will always affectionately refer to as Coach. While I know that every one of you holds your own unique and special memories with Coach, I would guess that many of them are similar in nature. I hope to share with you today a side of him that may surprise many of you, but a side that demonstrates his love, care, and compassion in a deep and beautiful way. Coach always told me that he was glad he only had sons, because he would not have known how to be a dad to girls. The first time he said it, I laughed and shrugged it off as nothing. But as he continued to say it over the years I got to know him, I became more and more convinced that he was flat out wrong. I am confident that he would be mad at me for sharing what I'm about to share, but I am also equally as confident that it will reveal just how deeply he loved and paint for you an even more detailed picture of who he was at his core. Initially, Coach wasn't thrilled that his youngest son was dating during baseball season, as he was afraid I would be nothing more than a distraction during the career-defining years of his future major leaguer in the making. He never said as much to me, but I heard it through the grapevine. It didn't take long for him to warm up and become a true girl dad, as he was always meant to be. I think I won him over as I sat next to him at one of Derek's many travel games with a pack of sunflower seeds in my lap. He began to tease me for how slowly I ate them, and then proceeded to teach me the proper strategy. Practiced my skills, and eventually beat him in a competition to see who could get through the most seeds in a minute. He had taught his first successful lesson as a true girl dad. Another time I was staying with the Leggs in a hotel when we were in high school, and after flipping through the channels on the TV, I stopped on my then favorite show, America's Next Top Model. It wasn't even 5 minutes later when Coach walked into the room and sat down next to me on the couch to watch. Initially, he teased me for watching it and made fun of the girls and their tasks, but it didn't take long before he was offering his own critiques and advice through the TV screen. Then the next thing I know, he is literally walking around the room demonstrating what a real catwalk should look like, just like a true girl dad would. As most girl dads do, he too made exceptions for me. He had a strict no crunching ice rule. As far as I know, that rule applied to everyone except me. He also didn't approve of flip-flops because of the annoying flip-flop sound they made when people walked in them. His wife and his boys were never allowed to wear them around him, and he would complain about anybody that walked by in them, but not me. He always told me I was welcome to wear my flip-flops anytime. He may have complained about it when I wasn't around, but he made the sacrifice while I was there. There was also this special little seat in the corner of the living room that I spent many summers in doing my devos or just taking in the view. Eventually that seat became the dog's favorite spot and was ultimately reserved for her at all times. Until I arrived for a visit, that is. Fleur was his little puppy princess, but even she lost her throne when I came to visit because he would immediately take the blanket off that seat and make her stay off as long as I was there. Coach treated me like a princess, just like a true girl dad would. He had to spend many days and evenings with me and my brother and sister, invading his home, and we often forced him to play our favorite board game with us, Life. We had our own family rules, like having to name your wife and children as soon as you got them in the game. The first time we made him do it, he rolled his eyes, but he came to love that rule over the years. He always affectionately named his wife Melinda, but didn't share the same sentiment when naming his children. Most of the time, he went with Bo and Cephas as his children's names, regardless of gender. I honestly don't think he ever won the game, though we must have played it dozens of times over the years. But believe it or not, he asked to play it almost every visit. He indulged in my simple joys, just like a real girl dad would. When Derek and I were doing long distance in college, Coach and I became game buddies. One weekend he had a playoff series in Oregon, and Coach and I shared a hotel room for the weekend. It was a horrible motel, possibly the worst I've ever stayed in. There were stains everywhere and holes in the walls, and I was genuinely uncomfortable, and he could tell. But he made light of the situation by making up random stories about how the stains and holes got there to make me laugh. Then he turned on the TV, flipped through the channels, and stopped when he got to another one of my favorites, Gypsy Weddings. He sat down on his bed and I sat on mine, and we binge-watched that marathon of Gypsy Weddings to keep from worrying too much about everything else around us. He made me feel so safe that weekend, just like a true girl dad would. After Dee and I got married, Coach came to live with us for a while he coached for the Warriors. He was the absolute best house guest, except for the fact that he wouldn't eat any of the vegetables I made for dinner. He complained every time I put something on his plate that wasn't broccoli or a potato. It got to the point that I would legitimately try and hide a single Brussels sprout under his chicken to try to get him to accidentally eat it. It never worked. He always found it, and he would fling it to the side of his plate in triumph. But even still, he always tried what I gave him. Even if it was just that one bite, he endured like a true girl dad would. Over the course of 15 years, we went on many shopping outings as a family. Each one started and ended the same exact way. Mama Legg and I would walk around the store while the boys waited patiently and talked. We would eventually make our way to the dressing rooms, and the boys would make their way to the comfy seats to prepare for the pending fashion show. I would come out in each item one by one and ask for their thoughts. Coach didn't say much, but he always gave me a thumbs up to everything. After I was all done, I'd come out with my items and ask Dee which ones I should get. Coach would quickly interrupt and inform me that we were getting it all. He'd tell Mama, and then he'd send me right over to the register to check out. Most men wouldn't sit for hours while their daughter-in-law walked up and down every aisle of Maurice's. And yet he sat there joyfully and genuinely paid attention, just like a true girl dad would. I could go on forever, but I'll share just one more. Early on in my relationship with Derek, somehow it came out at a family meal that my greatest dream in life was to someday open an orphanage in Africa. Coach was intrigued by this and asked me all sorts of questions about it. For years, he would buy lottery tickets, and every time he did, he would tell me that if he won, I'd get to start my orphanage. Never have I had anyone else in my life care as much about that dream as I do. Except him. That wasn't his dream, it was mine, but he knew how passionate I was about it and how much it would mean to me. Obviously, he never won the lottery. But I am convinced that if he did, he would have stuck to his word and helped me open that orphanage with his money. He adopted my dream as his own. He would have given up his dream for mine, just like a true girl dad would. Coach always said he wouldn't have been a good dad to daughters. He was wrong. And yet, even though I knew he was wrong, I find myself grateful that this special girl dad side of him was reserved for me and my sister-in-law. He was a truly incredible girl dad. Many of you know him as tough and strong and maybe intimidating, and he was all those things, but he was also so gentle and kind and incredibly loving. Now that he's gone, there's a little piece of my heart that feels empty. Many people would apologize for our loss and immediately ask me how Derek was. And believe me, I get it. Most people don't have the relationship with their in-laws that I do. Every time it happened, it stung a little bit, because what most people don't realize is that I feel like a little girl that lost her daddy too. It doesn't feel real that he's gone. My heart aches for my husband, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law and his family, and for my own children. I want the world to know the coach that I knew. But when I really stop to think about it, I'm reminded that the world will know. I see him when I watch my brother-in-law interact with his own kids and mine. I see him when my boys coach and encourage each other on the ball field. Most significantly, I wake up every morning and see a man that is the most beautiful reflection of the man we are celebrating today. Coach's legacy will live on through his sons and his grandchildren, and I'm genuinely honored to be a part of it all and thankful that he welcomed me into his family with open arms. Coach gave me so many things. He gave me love and encouragement. He gave me laughter and fun. He gave me evidence of what it looks like to genuinely love your spouse and your children. But the greatest gift he could have ever given me is the man I get to spend the rest of my life with. I am certain that I am married to the greatest man in the world because of the influence of David Legg. And for that alone, I will be forever grateful.
I'm sure after I'm done, you guys will all be wondering what I have for the last 10 years on why that beautiful, awesome girl has been married to me. I saw some of you people looking that way, but I'll start with, I'm used to, the only time I really speak in front of people are in a baseball setting, usually talking to baseball players before a big game, trying to get them fired up to go play. Half of them wanted to be there to play, half of them really didn't, so it was a really tough task. This is an entirely different speaking engagement for me, so I'm going to do the best I can. I'm aware that nothing I say or nothing that's said today will even come close to what needs to be said to my dad, our dad. It just won't ever measure up. I want to start with some thank you. Rick, thank you for setting up the GoFundMe and doing all the updates that nobody but you could get out to as many people, so thank you for that. So many of this room donated to that GoFundMe that helped our family fight. Thank you for those funds to do that. The Ennis people in the house, I can't thank you enough for how well you took care of our parents. I don't think they've cooked for the last year and a half. Every time I get a call that we just got a meal that's going to feed us for a week. Medicine delivered to their home 20 minutes out of town. People putting up fences for them. All the things that my dad couldn't do was take care of people in this room, so thank you. Kurt, thanks for that slideshow, man. That was sweet. Good job on that. And DC, most importantly, thank you for taking care of Mom and Dad. When I wasn't around, so thank you. Man, this sucks. was sitting there watching the pictures, and it's like, it doesn't feel real still. Like some of those pictures were 2 years ago. And Chris and I talk often about the fact that we don't feel like it's real, that it's just going to walk in one day. Unfortunately, that's not true, but I haven't really processed much. And however long it's been, I've gotten really good at if you guys watch the SEAL Team show, the ignore and override. I'm really good at the ignore and override. And I'm working on processing it. This is a start. I was talking to Chris about when a lot of people say when crappy things happen in life, time usually makes things better. And it's hard for me to see how time is ever going to make this better. The quality of man he was. You still feel that. You feel that. The way he loved my mom. Mom, I love you. But the way he loved you, he loved people whether they always deserved it or needed it, or he just loved. And the way he loved you was amazing. The way he cared for my brother and I and Cody gave us high standards to love and take care of our kids. I think the hardest part for me is what my kids have missed out on. Like I see a lot of faces in here that played for them. Man, I wish our kids could have that. You would be blown away with how many people showed up today. People from Florida, people from California, people from everywhere. My dad had a great, one of his best ability was to devalue himself. It was to never feel like he was actually who he was. And he would be floored with how many people showed up to this and how many people more wanted to. They just couldn't. And I thank you for showing up for him. I've never been around someone that cared so little about what was happening in their lives. And what was more important to them was what was happening in your life and our lives. And he wanted to walk alongside that with us. Regardless of what it was, he wanted to be in those lives. And people aren't made that way. Something I love is his desire to win. His desire to win at anything. Anything. His desire to be excellent. Whether it was golfing, fishing, tying flies. I mean, the man completed a full Ironman at 60. I'm hoping I'm walking at 60. Personally, he had a way of motivating me to be better, unlike anybody that has ever been in my life. It was the year after Chris and I started dating. I sucked. And I remember very vividly, we were walking down. He asked me to go on a walk, which I knew I was in trouble. And he looked at me, 7 houses down, we stopped. He looked me right in my eyes and said, "Son, what do you want to do? Is baseball important to you? Is this what you want to do?" Of course, I was 17. The answer was like, "Yeah, Dad, I want to be the first round pick and I want to get the $15 million. And he said, "Son, you're not working like that. You're not working like that." I had 2 options. I was talking to Haz about it yesterday. You have 2 options when somebody confronts you like that. There's a little kid. You either stick up your middle finger and say, "Screw you," or you saddle it up and you figure it out if that's what you want to go do. And my dad had a way to do that. Not just with me, but people in his life, sports, marriages, whatever. And that's something that it's funny, we ask our little kids all the time at they're 5 and 6 what do they want to do. And they either want to be a firefighter or police officer or fill in the blank. And I didn't want any of that. From the moment I can remember, I wanted to be my dad. I wanted to be my dad because the guy he was. I'm sitting here at 32 and I've been coaching for 7 years, and I still today want to be my dad. Till the day I die, that's the guy that I want to be my dad. That's why I play baseball, that's why I golf, that's why I fly fish, that's why I compete in stupid Ironmans, which I don't even know why I do that. But if it weren't for my dad, I wouldn't know who I was. I was blessed, my brother and I were blessed. We got to play with him, play for him. Growing up into high school, I got to coach with him for the Bucks for 2 years. I got to coach with him at my Corbin for 2 years. My family and I started 2020 off. Oregon's a little different than Montana in a lot of ways. And so when 2020 happened, we got to Montana and we just stayed. We didn't go back. We got to spend 4 months with them then. I got to complete 3 half Ironmans with them. It still doesn't feel like enough. It still feels like we're missing out. That I had so much more to learn, so many more memories to share. The lesson for me is you need to love the people in your life like time is running out. Because unfortunately it is. For each one of us, we have a time allotted. And you need to look the people in your eye that are in your life, and you need to love them every day. Like that sand is just dripping away. My challenge to everybody in this room is my dad's legacy will live on if we all continue to live out what he has been in our lives. And he will be able to live on. I thank you guys for coming out today. I thank you for loving my dad. To seeing some of the faces that showed up and made it out here, it means more to me than you will ever understand. Thank you.
So I tried to write something, and I couldn't. So then I thought I would just thank you all for coming. And again, do a shout out to the people of Ennis. I've worked here for 11 years. Many students here, because they love me. And they love Dave. A couple of really special ones for him. He substituted here for my dear friend Wendy for math. He was a PE teacher. But as Derek referenced, the care that this community in the worst 19 months of our lives. There's no place like Ennis. My neighbors care like most people never get. Derek said so much of what I feel. Carissa also. He was the greatest man ever. He lived a life, no matter where he was, no matter what he was doing, with the same principles, ethics, morals, beliefs, every single day, every single minute. He never wavered. And I personally have never, and I've known a lot of people, I've never met a person like that. It was fun at the baseball reception last night to just hear some of these boys were coached by him from 8 to 18. He was probably the most influential person in their lives at the time. And I think they would stand up here and say the exact same things I'm saying. But for a wife, to say that even in the quiet moments, he still was that guy. I was loved. That's why this is so hard. Because most of you don't get that. And I'm thankful for the 34 years. But I too will miss memories that we should have made. I know where he is. He wasn't ready. He fought it to the end. He said multiple times, well, you know, Melinda, he could heal me right now. And his kidneys had already started shutting down. And I said, yes, honey, he could. But you got a really great place where you're going. So hang on to that. But again, I just want to thank all those that came so far, that show a love for a man so remarkable it's hard to even put in words. And for this town of Ennis. Could not have done it without you. Thank you.
My name is Jeff. I have a very special connection to Dave. It's kind of a bond that only he and I share. I got to know him in a way that many of you will just not be able to relate to. I got to know him through the game of baseball. I had the honor, the privilege of serving as the team chaplain for the Corbin baseball team that Garrett was leading. And I got to know Dave as he came and helped and served. I could always count on, at some point during the game, David mosey on down, he'd find me leaning on a rail, and as a pastor, I'm always talking about spiritual things. I'm always talking to people about their questions about the Bible, so I wanted to talk baseball strategy. Well, Dave, as a baseball coach, is always talking about baseball strategy, so he would pepper me with questions about, talk to me about this war in the Old Testament thing. What's going on there? He would ask me questions about a verse, or he would share his thoughts, and I'm going to miss those days. Those were special times. I have a story. I know you all have a story. You have a memory. And it's hard in times like this. We're here because Dave isn't. We're here because Dave is gone. And we all know, when we stop to think about it, that death is a paradox, isn't it? Death is a paradox because it's final, and death takes someone from us, and it causes us to hurt. Death is raw, and it's final, and it hurts us. But what makes death a paradox is that it also gives us something, doesn't it? It gives us memories. It gives us stories to tell. It gives us opportunities to come together and to reflect. Yes, death hurts because it takes something from us. But it gives us a thing that we've already heard referenced 2 times. It gives us this thing called legacy. And legacies by definition endure. Legacies by definition do not end. And death, in a very weird way, in a paradoxical way, it gives us that. And those memories and that legacy, it fills that void. It fills that thing in our heart that makes us feel like this isn't real. Because death is a paradox, I have come to believe that every person that comes to a memorial service should leave with a tear in their eye and a smile on their face. Why a tear? Death hurts. Death takes something from us. And death is hard to deal with. Why a tear? Because grieving is good. Grieving is important. I think God gives us tears to help us flush out the pain in our heart. Those tears are good. Tears are not a sign of weakness, my friends. Tears are a sign that you loved deeply. If you don't have a tear in your eye, you didn't know David Legg. Why a tear? Because death hurts. But grieving is so important. Grieving is part of that process. Because if you don't grieve, you will be emotionally stuck and you will not be able to move forward. And if you don't move forward, you never get to that smile on the face, do you? Where does the smile come from? Well, the smile comes from those fond memories that we have of Dave, the quirky things he did, the family vacation where nothing went right, the memory of a lesson where Dave squared you up, maybe took you on a walk, looked you right in the eyes and said, what do you want to do with your life? It brings a smile to our face because we now know that we have this legacy that we carry with us. We have these memories that bring us joy. Death is a paradox. And that's why every person, and I see it, I see the tears in the eye and I see the smiles on the face. When I think back of one of my favorite memories of Dave, it was actually the last time I saw him. We were sitting on the couch at Derek's house. Dave was visibly weak. Carissa had him propped up with 17 pillows. He was surrounded by his wife and Derek and Carissa. Kids were there. And as we were talking, we were sharing stories, and eventually I began to ask him about heaven. His eyes lit up. He said, I'm ready. I'm not scared. I'm ready to go. And then I noticed his eyes changed. He was looking off into the distance, and I let him just sit there in silence, and I asked him, what you thinking? And he said, I'm just sad that I'm not going to be around for these guys. And he pointed to each person around that couch. He said, I got more to give. I want to be here to give back to my kids and my grandkids. And I'm just sad that I'm not going to be able to do that. You guys, it was literally his last days on this earth. And who was he thinking about? Literally his last days on this earth. And he was thinking about other people. He had more in the tank and he wanted to keep giving. That's who Dave was. And because I knew that, I said, Dave, buddy, you fought the good fight. You have endured. You have kept the faith till the end. And he smiled and looked at his wife and he's like, that's one of my favorite verses. I'm like, of course it is. Because it's talking about overcoming struggles. It's talking about fighting till the very end. The verse is cool, but the context is even cooler, you guys. That phrase, that verse was written by the Apostle Paul, talking to a young man named Timothy. What was their relationship? Paul was Timothy's spiritual father. Paul was Timothy's mentor. Paul was Timothy's coach. And Paul was about to die. And he knew it. Paul needed someone to carry on his really important work of sharing the gospel and building the church. And he needed someone that he could trust. And he said, Timothy, my time on earth is short. And I need to pass this mantle of leadership on to my protege. Does that sound like anybody you can think of? A coach, a mentor, a spiritual father, saying, carry on my legacy. We've heard that word. That's who Dave was. That was my last memory. As we had that conversation back and forth, I'm like, you know what? This guy's just like Paul. There was no quit. There was no quit in Dave Legg. Whether he was preparing for one of his Ironman Whether he was trying to work out a kink in somebody's swing, whether he was trying new treatment to kill this cancer that was ravaging his body, there was no quit in Dave Legg. He fought the good fight. He showed us what that looks like, to endure to the very end, because there's no quit in Dave Legg. On that day, I'll tell you what, I had a tear in my eye, and I had a smile on my face. Because it was so clear to me that Dave's legacy lives on today through each of you. Each person that Dave has poured his life into, you keep his memory alive. You carry on his important work just like Timothy did for Paul, because you are the embodiment of his legacy. On November 15th, Dave took a journey. Dave took a walk that none of us have ever walked. He passed from life on earth to death. His time on earth was done, and he took a journey that the scriptures call a walk through the valley of the shadow of death. But Dave wasn't alone on this journey. He had a travel companion. You know these words, but I want the psalmist to tell us. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Dave took a journey from life to death, but he had a travel companion. He had no fear, because the Good Shepherd was with him. And the text says that the shepherd had two tools of the trade. Every good shepherd had two tools, a rod and a staff. If Dave were choosing his two tools, he would have had his little clipboard with the arrow on it and a phone gun, right? But the shepherd had two other tools, and they're important. Every shepherd had a rod. It was like a little baseball bat, a little stick with a knob on the end. And that staff was a sign of the shepherd's strength and his authority, because he would use that to fend off attackers. If a wolf or a coyote were approaching the flock, the shepherd would take the rod and he'd thwack the intruder. Or maybe there was a stubborn sheep, and the shepherd had to take that rod and let the sheep know that you better get back in with the flock. If we have any umpires in the room, maybe you experienced Dave wielding the rod. Maybe if you were late to practice, you've experienced Dave wielding the rod, because Dave carried himself with strength and authority, didn't he? But every good shepherd had that second tool. He had a staff. And the staff is the one we think of. It's the one with the curved end, with the hook on the end. Why did a shepherd have a staff? Because the shepherd was kind and he was gentle. And if one of the sheep got off on the side of a hill or side of a cliff, the shepherd would be able to reach down and pull the sheep to safety. Or maybe one of the little runt sheep couldn't get to mom to eat. So the good shepherd that was tender and kind and like that girl daddy, he would reach over and he would help that little sheep get to mom. Because the good shepherd is tender and kind and compassionate, just like Dave. Dave carried himself with grace and with humility. He had incredible wisdom, but he never wielded that. He was kind and gentle like the Good Shepherd. See, Dave was safe on that journey. He was fearless on that journey. And the reason why he was able to take that walk without any fear, it wasn't because he knew the scripture. It was because he knew the shepherd. Dave spent time with the shepherd, and those attributes of a good shepherd showed up in the way he lived his life. With strength, with kindness, with tenderness, and a relentless love for those that he cared about. Like a good shepherd, Dave fought to protect the sheep that were entrusted to his care. Today, we gather to remember a man who lived courageously, who fought valiantly, and who loved people relentlessly. Dave. We miss you, and we will fight to keep your legacy alive. Thanks for being here.
Every time I tried to make it on my own, every time I tried to stand, I start to fall. And all those lonely roads that I have traveled on, there was Jesus. When the life I built came crashing to the ground, when the friends I had were nowhere to be found, I couldn't see it then, but I can see it now. There was Jesus. There was Jesus. In the waiting, in the searching, in the healing and the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, where I've been and where I'm going, even when I didn't know it or I couldn't see it, there was Jesus. For this man who needs amazing kind of grace, for forgiveness at a price I couldn't pay. I'm not perfect, so I thank God every day that there was Jesus. There was Jesus. In the waiting, in the searching, in the healing and the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, where I've been and where I'm going, even when I didn't know it or I couldn't see it, there was Jesus on the mountain, in the valleys. There was Jesus in the shadows of the alleys. There was Jesus in the fire and the flood. There was Jesus, always is and always was.
As we close, I want to read that passage from 2 Timothy, and I want it to encourage your hearts today. For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time has come for my departure. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. Dave upgraded his baseball hat for a crown of righteousness, and he's rocking it right now. So let's pray as we close. Heavenly Father, I thank you that you are a good shepherd. I thank you that you built us in such a way that we need each other. I thank you that you built us in such a way that we have this instinct that we need one another. We need to live in the context of community. What a blessing it is to hear the way that this community has surrounded and loved the Legg family. We thank you for the way that Dave shepherded those that you entrusted to him. And we know his legacy will live on. He reflected your attributes. And God, we want the same, to reflect yours. God, I pray comfort on those that are grieving. I pray that peace would come. I pray that you would minister to those who feel that void in their heart. Fill it with your peace, that peace that surpasses all understanding. And God, bring to their memories in those times of sadness those best days, those best times that they look back on, that bring a smile to their face. God, would you do that for those that are grieving today? Thank you for the time we had with Dave. And we'll let you have some time with him now until we're rejoined in glory. God, thanks for being so good to us. And it's in your name that we pray all these things. Amen. Well, this was a special time, but we're not done. There's still more stories to tell. Melinda and the Legg family would like to invite you to a reception, but we're not going to go through the building. We're going to go outside these doors, and we're going to walk down to the front of the building, and we're going to enter through